Thanks so much for being here, you guys. I will start by saying I'm Jami Duffy. I'm the Executive Director of Youth on Record in Denver, Colorado. And Kate, are we recording? We're good to go? Cool. So Youth on Record, I've had the real honor of being the Executive Director for 10 years, and we are serving youth ages 12 to 24 throughout the state of Colorado by hiring professional local musicians as their educators and mentors and teachers and support system. And so really blessed to do this work. We are a largely BIPOC serving organization with majority BIPOC leadership and BIPOC staff. I bring that up because in the context of what we're talking about, preparedness, you know, we always have to be considering traditionally marginalized and minoritized communities and how all of what's happening in our world is impacting them at higher levels. So I bring that up to say that part of the reason we're so committed to making plans like this and being prepared is because not only the youth, but our team are folks who could be at greater risk of impacts of both coronavirus, civil unrest, natural disasters. And so it's, you know, it really is part of our value system. And one of our pillars is community activation. So in addition to working on academic success and economic opportunity, activating the community is something we're really committed to. We do that in partnership with the Denver Housing Authority, who hosts us in this beautiful space where we have a recording studio and offices and youth classrooms and a lot of windows. And that's going to come up when we're talking about preparedness. So just a few housekeeping things. The chat's going to be open. Kate will wave to you. Kate is monitoring the chat. So if you have questions as we go through this, please feel free to put them in there. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes just to go through our plan with you. This plan is completely open sourced. You have access to it. You can use it. You can replicate it. You can use the exact same language. We're totally cool with that. If you can't click on a link, it's because the link's not for you, meaning that it's just internal for our team in terms of finances and some operations passwords and things like that. So just so you know, there's also some resources that we will send to you at the end of this presentation. And we've got some great folks on this call. I've got my buddy Matt, who I'm going to bring up after I'm done talking, who, and I'll do his introduction, but he's got some great resources for us as well. So just so happy you're spending the morning here. The final thing I want to say before I dive into this is at Youth on Record, we're unbelievably committed to the whole person at work. What that means is we understand that we are, as leaders in this field, I will say this to you, you are not immune from what is going on. You feel it in your body, you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your mind, you're holding what feels to you like the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I just want to tell you that I see that. I see you. I know this is really hard. I know that this moment is testing all of us. And so taking care of yourselves and these practices are important for you as well. And I'm saying that, of course, as a reminder to myself. It's really easy to say, well, I'm in charge of all of this, and so I don't have to pay attention to the personal wellness section of this. But in fact, you really, really have to. You do have to put your mask on first. And so just know that I see the burden that you all carry. I see the communities that you serve. I think you're amazing that you keep showing up every single day to do this work. This sector is arguably and humbly, possibly the most important sector in the United States. We pick up the slack that, you know, maybe business and government aren't picking up. We do have some government friends on our call who are quite the exception to that. And by the slack, I mean, you know, it's a lack of funding. And so we have a lot of people and animals and our environment that rely on us. And so we've got to be okay. And so that's another reason why we put this together, is it's important that we're strong during these times and that we're prepared. So yeah, that's what this is. This is just about being prepared, right? It's preparing your umbrella before the rain. And like my buddy Slavika said, we hope we don't ever have to use this. This plan is specific to civil unrest. However, there are many parts of this plan that I encourage you to look at for anything that could happen in your community. So yeah, let's just start going through the slide deck. If you have questions, you can point out the slide. Again, I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up for just a rich dialogue. Finally, my hope is that we all stay connected, right? That we share resources with each other. We talk to each other about this work because this is really, really important for the nonprofit sector and helping professions. So I'm hoping we build a little bit of a community here, and I'm just so grateful you all signed up. So the contents of this plan, what we're really thinking about first, right, is people, programs, places, and then how we're going to tell our story. So that's what we're going to go through today. We went ahead and defined civil unrest for folks. We took this from a few reputable sources. When we talk about civil unrest, I think it's important to tell your teams this, and this is at least what I'm telling my team. It's not a matter of if. Civil unrest is happening. It's happening every single day in the United States, right? We recently had a situation here in Denver where we had two opposing groups protesting. There was a shooting and somebody unfortunately did die, and now somebody's been charged with second-degree murder. This happened on a Sunday, a couple blocks from Youth on Record, where we were at the time filming a youth performance in a very COVID-safe way, but that just gives a context. It was just a stone's throw away from us. So the question is not if, the question is what happens when civil or if civil unrest gets to the point that it affects your business. So that's what we've got to be thinking about. So this isn't something in the far off distance. This is happening in real time. So a couple things we wanted to present to our team was how to stay safe in direct action. This may or may not be applicable to your teams. Our team, we are a social justice organization. Our team is very active in the community. The issues surrounding them and in the political theater impact their lives directly. So it's very likely that our team members will participate in direct action. So we've got a list here of just safety tips for direct action, no matter what you're protesting or what you're called to do. These are things to keep in mind at all times. Then you're going to see, all of the pink here are links. So how to stay safe as possible in peaceful protests. We also have a COVID portion of it of how to stay safe in protests during COVID. So there is a possibility that we could see demonstrations kick up around the election if there's election uncertainty, or certainly for either side of the political line feeling as though they haven't been fairly represented, right? And we can have an offline, not recorded conversation about US politics. But in this moment, there's going to be folks on either side of this political theater who are going to be upset with the results. We also might be in a waiting game, and that on top of COVID might really spark some outrage for people. So this is how to keep your team safe if they choose to participate in direct action. Also really wanted to put something about voter safety. We are encouraging our team to vote early if they're going to vote. There have been some conversations about there being some unrest and voter intimidation at the polls. Again, we are largely BIPOC serving, and our team is BIPOC, so it's also important to recognize the historical context of voter suppression within Black and Brown communities and giving your teams the tools they need if they see something. So over here on the right side of your screen, you're going to see some COVID recommendations for staying safe at the polls. Then you're going to see some links for civil unrest considerations. There's some information there about the multiple scenarios that could happen at the polls. We have specific to us, but if you're outside of Colorado, I recommend that you put up-to-date polling information for your state and the city where you serve, so people understand whether or not their polls are open or closed. There's lots of conversation throughout the United States of people going to their polling place and it's, where is it, right? So keeping people up to date and keeping them prepared. We also have 2 areas that you can report incidents of voter intimidation. I highly encourage you to let your teams know that. And let them know that if you see something, say something. We do need these reported. We're even having some challenges in Denver. People have reported things, then, you know, elected officials are saying, well, we're not seeing that. You know, they've got cameras out, but the more people who report, the more we'll understand the context. And then just a couple other resources about what to know before you hit the polls. So as we're talking about people, you know, I encourage you to have folks think about their personal and family wellness. Taking care of your employees right now is your top priority. If they can't do their work because they're not prepared physically, emotionally with their basic needs, then we can't serve the people that we care about just as much as we care about our teams. And then we're also encouraging folks to plan ahead for jobs. We went at your job. So we went ahead and put something in here that said, you know, really, unless otherwise stated, you are required to work, but talk to your supervisor about what that looks like. That again comes from the fact that we have so many folks who are so deeply active in the community who you have to decide within your team. If you're going to pay people to be on the streets and protest, cool, that's your business. If you're not going to do that, just make sure your team knows that. What we want to make sure is nobody's just assuming anything. So, you know, we encourage our team to just plan ahead with their supervisor. What do you want me to do in the case of civil unrest? What is my new work schedule? What could this look like? Encourage folks who are working with outside partners. We work in the schools. We're in 12 public schools right now. So I need my whole team to understand their school's public safety plan. If you have team members who are working outside of their home or outside of your site, you need to talk to that site partner and make sure they have a plan. And make sure your team knows what that plan is. So if our team is at the schools on election day and something happens, I need to know that those school partners are taking care of our teams and that they're prepared. We're encouraging people to save their PTO, let your staff know, like, it's our opinion that this is not the best time to take vacation for extended periods if you can avoid it, because we're not totally sure what's coming. And that's just also some COVID precaution as well. We don't want our teams to be stressed out that they don't have enough time off if they get sick, or if they get hurt, or if something happens and they're not able to do their job. Really important here. I'm hearing a lot of people in Colorado talking about change of location. This means, wow, if something goes on in my town and I'm not safe, do I need to head over to my brother's house or my mom and dad's house or my best friend's house who lives in a place that's safer? Totally fine. These are great things to be thinking about, especially if you live alone and you have team members who live alone. Where are you going to be if something happens, or if you're in a place that doesn't feel safe? And so the one thing we ask our team is to notify your supervisor or me if you've changed your primary location. We don't know what's going to happen. There could be a scenario where, you know, 2 or 3 of the members of our executive team would actually go out to try to find some of our folks. And if we don't know where you are, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. So that's just a safety precaution as well. In terms of taking care of your team, we are highly recommending that all team members have their basic needs met in their home for an extended period of lockdown. That could be 30 days, right? It could be longer, but I think 30 days is the realistic thing that we can ask our teams to prepare for. We have done, and we'll do it again as a team incentive. We bought folks before COVID, or when COVID hit, grocery gift cards. Because some of the things, when you have entry-level employees and, you know, while they may or may not be living paycheck to paycheck, the nonprofit sector is not known for our deep pockets and high salaries. And so if folks have to prepare for a month, a lot of our employees prepare for the week. And that's the amount of groceries they can buy. So keep that in mind. It's a small expense for your business. It means a lot to the team. We'll be doing that again for our team. And I can't tell you, it says to them, we care about you, and we see you, and we're serious about you making sure you've got, enough food in your house and get your prescriptions filled and all of that kind of stuff. We're really highly encouraging that you plan for your mental and emotional wellness ahead of time. We've got our buddy Spencer on the call, who runs a great organization called Music Minds Matter, which is a mental wellness meetup for musicians. And, we've learned a lot from him. And I know he talks a lot about, hey, you've got to have a plan for your mental wellness, especially if you hit a crisis point. So start to think about, what are the projects you want to work on if you are locked in? What's your media diet? Who are you going to talk to? What are the things that you're going to do if you're not able to go and walk around, and walking is your safety net, right? So just encourage people to start thinking about that. And then we say, just make sure you discuss your personal safety plan with your friends and family and the people you love the most. They should know what your plan is. And everybody should have a plan. This is not just for civil unrest. This is for natural disasters. For those of us in the state of Colorado and those who don't know this, we have an entire mountain range that is burning. We have thousands of Coloradans evacuated from their homes, right? That happened in one of the fires literally overnight. It spread to 160,000 acres. So the more you have a plan and you know what you're going to do for any situation, then when you're in that emergency place, you can hold on to it and go, I've already prepped for this, right? Because the sort of trauma brain is going to have a really, really hard time planning. So you plan now when you're feeling okay. And so that's what we're encouraging our team. We've got some useful resources here. Some of these you'll be able to get to. These at the bottom here, the Preparedness Essentials Checklist, Self-Care During Shelter in Place, a self-care sheet for creatives, all of that stuff we will send to you after this call. I think that's locked to you right now, but these are great resources to send to your team. So for your programs, I'm not going to go into Youth on Record's program plan, but what I am going to tell you is that we did a phased plan. I highly recommend you do it too. Continuity of services, it's critical. How are we going to keep providing our services to the community in the event of civil unrest? So we have sort of a phased one plan. What we did is, this is what we're doing if these bullet points happen, right? So, we're going to go to virtual programming. If schools are still in session, we still have internet, right? We still have public services, and if we're issued a stay-at-home order. We went as far as to say, if an insurrection act, folks call it martial law, is it invoked for some reason by the president, if schools are not in session, if internet access is not available, and we still have access to public radio and low power FM stations, we will continue to provide services that way. So we did go worst case scenario, like, whoa, we don't have internet, there's tanks on the streets, and not to be hysterical about it. But I will tell you that in the process of doing that, we were like, wow, this Youth on Record free school is a good idea no matter what. So, necessity is the mother of invention. And so we had a new program idea just by doing this planning. And then we have a resume to the next normal work included here. So just start to think about with your programs team, hey, what are our services and what are we going to do in multiple different scenarios? We got to think about how to protect our places. So you need to be thinking about your personal place of business, neighborhood safety, and then we recommend an external meeting location that is designated amongst your team, that you share that address with amongst your team. If for some reason you can't get to your place of business, you can't meet online, you've got to get some physical things. So we have a plan for the youth media studio safety. How do we lock it up? How do we make sure it's safe? We've also really started talking about neighborhood safety. I highly recommend this. We're starting to talk about this with the Denver Housing Authority. So what we're wanting to do here is to have a community response team or a community action team with all of the providers in our neighborhood. We are in a mixed-use residential commercial neighborhood. And so the bottom level of our builds are all commercial. Above us is all residents, and the Denver Housing Authority is our landlord. And so getting us all together so that we're on the same page. Thinking about things, I mentioned the windows. We are all windows here. If something were to happen and there was civil unrest in our neighborhood, we have a ton of assets here. And we may not be able to get down here if the windows are broken, and then what happens in that case. So we're already starting to have conversations about what is the neighborhood plan if we need to board things up. What do we need to do if there's vandalism? How do you file those claims? All of that. Who's your contact person? If you own your building, that's a different circumstance. Like, how are you going to prepare for that? If you have tenants, you really have to talk to your tenants. And get on the same page. And if you are a tenant, you've got to talk to your landlord and say, whose responsibility is this? Who pays for it? When do we get it done? When do we say, yep, the time is now, so that we're all on the same page? So highly recommend that you do that. And then just select an external meeting location. My recommendation is that that address be shared in physical copy form of your plan rather than live online. This is just an understanding of how we're shutting down the youth media studio. We've gone through every single space. This is a checklist that any member of our team could use. If you're the last one in here, this is what's got to happen. So make a checklist for closing your space down for up to 30 days. For the finance folks on the team, talking about income, expenses, and scenario planning, I think is important. A couple things that we've thought about is, you know, if you're accrual based and you've got accounts receivables, collect up, ask people to pay you, get as much money in your accounts as you can right now. If you have funders who have said, oh, how do you want to be paid? Do you want to be paid quarterly? Do you want to be paid annually? Feel free to give them a call. It doesn't hurt to say, actually, I know we said quarterly, but if we could have that now so that we're prepared for anything that happens, that would really support us in our continuity of services. So it's worth an ask. If you know, we've been advised by our treasurer that if you have any accounts that have more than $250,000, they may not be insured above the 250. So, you know, if you need to open a separate account in a separate bank, there are great credit unions locally that have nonprofit reserve fund accounts. Highly recommend doing that. You know, just completing all of your basic, your audits, your 990s, just be on top of your financial stuff so that if things get pretty bad, you're not trying to track down your auditor, right? You've got it all ready and you can keep applying for the kind of funds that you need to do your work. You want to make sure your finance team has all the technology and internet access they need to reconcile monthly financials. We don't want to do this stuff by hand. Secure all of your data in multiple places that pertains to funding and all of your financial records, right? So back that stuff up. For us, we wanted to secure QuickBooks, make sure we have our own copy, our CPA has a copy, make sure our treasurer has a copy so that we don't lose years and years worth of really important financial information. If God forbid something were to happen, that would, you know, disrupt our system. I mean, civil unrest, we haven't talked about this that much, but civil unrest could be virtual, right? We could get hacked, you know, we're not totally sure what's coming. So just prepare for everything. Really just define your financial chain of command for multiple scenarios. If your director or your accountant or whomever gets sick or is hurt, you need to make sure that you have a plan of who is reconciling those, because if we don't do that, we can't get funded by our foundation partners, right? So we've got to make sure that we're on top of that. Again, back up all of your sensitive financial information. Highly encourage we all begin working on succession plans if you don't have one for your organization. This means if your leadership team or your executive director, I like to say, I don't like the hit by the bus. I don't like the dies in a volcano. I like the gets abducted by aliens. So if your ED gets abducted by aliens, and is off somewhere in a cloud in the sky, you've got to have a plan. And we can talk more about succession planning in the future, but making that a part of your culture. This is not something that you are doing like in secret in a closet. Nobody knows about it but you and your board, right? Your whole team needs to know you're doing this. Your team also needs to know you're doing this because it's the safe and right thing to do to protect the organization, not because your ED's leaving or is going to get fired or abducted, right? Like it's really, you've got to make sure that your team feels comfortable with the fact that a succession plan is a preparedness plan and not an exit plan necessarily. And then we just joined an employers council so that this is a paid service we joined so that if we have questions about policies and procedures, we're not hunting down volunteer board members to be like, hey, help us with this. This is a service we can call, they work for us. So those are sorts of things to keep in mind. I did put a link in here for philanthropy and philanthropists. How can philanthropy prepared? We've got some philanthropic partners on the call today, and I would recommend for nonprofit organizations on the call, have a conversation with your close partners, right? We're really close with some of our partners who are on the call today. These are things that you can open the chain of communication and say, hey, do you guys have a plan for civil unrest? What could possibly happen to our funding? It's okay to make those calls. They may not know, but it's okay to ask. Make sure that your business, next we talk about operations. So this is continuity of your business, right? So you got to make sure your team is ready for multiple things. We have a go bag ready. This means if we have to leave our office quickly or come to the office quickly to get the most important things. This includes checks, a cash bag, all employee essential documents, financial documents, essential contacts, tax info, insurance policies, batteries, flashlights, toolbox, and PPE. Have that just ready. Have that ready in your house too, just in case, right? So a go bag for your office, encourage your employees to have a go bag. Triple check your insurance policies, right? You don't want to be in a scenario where your insurance is like, oh, we don't cover that, right? And this might be a time where you're paying a little bit more for insurance, but and hopefully, you've got a really good policies in place to protect you in the event that something happens. And then your master database, you want to write it, save it in multiple locations, and print it. We also recommend that you have printed copies of your civil preparedness plan for every team member, including all of those attachments, right? So we need to make sure that if something happens and we don't have access to the internet for a while, for whatever reason, that we can still access our plan. God forbid it lives on mine and you're like, oh, don't have it. So make sure that you print it and you have it and you've got multiple copies and that you have a master copy somewhere. Copies. So finally, we've got to talk about how we're going to tell our story of this time. How are you going to communicate with your teams about what's going on? How are you going to communicate externally? And what is the story? So, our recommendation is that we have clear, consistent internal messaging. When COVID first hit, we sent daily emails to our team. We had social media channels going, regular calls, regular check-in. Your team does not want to be in the dark. It scares people. It makes people feel undervalued. It makes them feel like they don't matter. And I get it. I struggle with this sometimes because you're working at such a fast pace if you're a leader of an organization. And sometimes you don't want to tell your team everything's that's going on because you don't want to burden them, right? So just figure out how you're going to communicate clearly, consistently with your team. Press. Our recommendation is that you get ready for your press statements now. You don't want to be in the middle of something crazy town and you don't know what you're going to say. I'll say this to folks on the call. If your organization has a particular stance on democracy and fair voting and fair elections, go ahead and put that down now, right? So that, we saw a lot in COVID. There were some statements coming out, but boy, did we certainly see it with George Floyd, and people struggled to put out their company's philosophy about racial injustice. Talk about it now. Talk about free and fair democracy and elections and media. If you want to have conversations about policing, local, national policing, have them now. Have an understanding of where you stand on things so that you're not having to go through committees of people to figure out your messaging while things are on fire. Do it now. And so that's something that we're going to do, and, you know, kind of prepare a couple statements. I've already been writing some things for our organization about multiple scenarios and where we might stand on it. And just keep your family, your organization's family in the loop. For us, that's students, alumni, former fellows, partner artists, music ambassadors, key partners, board members, our donors. Just let them know what you're up to. I think that, you know, that really will matter to folks, that you keep them in the loop and they know where you are and they know where you stand and they know you're safe and they know you continue to serve. So at that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and would love to hear some of the comments and questions. So Kate and Andrea, I don't know if you just want to go through some of them and call them out, and then I can talk about them. And then we'll open it up for some questions. And then I've got my buddy Matt here who, Matt, I'll have you introduce yourself in a second, but he also has some great resources for us. So let's all, for a second, just take a big breath. It's not ideal. This is not an ideal year. These are not ideal scenarios. And I believe in everybody on this call, and my own personal belief system is that this moment is perfect for you. There is something about you that was totally made for it and is called to it. And so this is not business as usual, but we're just going to keep building on community, keep leaning on each other, keep supporting each other, loving each other, sharing resources, and knowing that this is the first time for all of us. 2020, we're just all little babies here in 2020 trying to figure it out. So some folks have different levels of expertise, and I want to hear from you. So questions. Andrea, Kate, did we have any questions or good suggestions in the chat? And then I want to open it up to my buddy Matt.
We don't have any questions in the chat right now, but we do have a couple of great tips from Gary with Bumpy Stanton.
Yeah.
I don't know, Gary, if you'd prefer to just unmute and...
That'd be great. Yeah, Gary. Yeah, Gary, if you can give us philanthropy advice. And for those of you who don't know Gary Stoyer, he's the CEO of the Bumpy Stanton Foundation, an incredible partner. And when you talk about like having a philanthropic partner on your side who's down, who gets it, that's Gary and his team. So Gary, what's your advice for us with philanthropy?
Well, thanks, and thanks for doing this, Jamie. It's
happy
a
to.
Great service to the community, and great to not just think about your own organization, but how you can share what you're doing with the rest of the community. And it's very much in keeping with your ethos and that of Youth on Record. So thank you for that. I just made a couple of suggestions. One is something that we've done as a way of better serving our grantees, which is switching to wire transfers to bank transfers, ACH, from cutting checks. And because we realize many folks are not even working from their offices now. And so it's a huge challenge to have to go into your office to get the paper checks, to then go to the bank, to then deposit them. And especially as you're thinking about potential civil unrest, where you may not have access to your office, or mail might not even be delivered. We've certainly seen what's going on with mail. That's a simple thing that a lot of funders are trying to do. So I would say one immediate tip is talk to all your funders and ask for that. From the funder standpoint, there are some security issues, which is that we then have to have control of your banking info funder. But I just know from our exploring it and doing it, it can be done. And many funders are thinking about this. So if you haven't talked to your funders about that already, I would definitely recommend talking to them about that. And the other thing that I suggested, which is kind of related to that, because you talked about gathering up paperwork that you need, shifting to as much as possible a paperless office, scan everything, put it into the cloud. It can be on your server, but then your server should also be backed up to the cloud. And that way, if everything's paperless, everybody can work from home. You can walk away from your office, and even if in a worst case scenario, your physical office no longer exists, you have all that critical documentation still available to you. So I would say that's another kind of emergency preparedness tip, is to just shift to a paperless office. And then of course the side benefit is it's easily available if folks are working from home. And also you need less space for storage. You can get rid of all those big, ugly lateral file cabinets that hold all those paper documents that you don't really need anymore.
You know, Garrett, I like any suggestion that allows for more beautifully designed offices. Henry knows how much I hate ugly old file cabinets. Yes, digital, super important. And that's a great suggestion with the funders. We've seen a little bit more of that, but I will say, yeah, we get random checks to my house right now, to the office, you know, and so it is, and like I'm moving right now, so I'm worried that, you know, these school partners are going to keep sending checks to my houses. So as much as we can have those conversations, great suggestion. I want to open it up to my buddy Matt. He is listed here as Majestic Collaborations. If you don't know him, I'm so glad you're going to know him now. Matt had like a deep, like inner life calling to translate what he knew from music festival production to emergency preparedness. And when he started talking to all of us about this a couple years ago, I was like, this guy is a mastermind. Like, that is brilliant. And he has done so much work locally and nationally to help support, in particular, arts communities to be prepared, and also to partner arts communities in the preparedness effort. He's a genius and we love him, and he's a great artist, and he's got all kinds of advice for us. So I want to open it up to you, Matt.
Just take that in. I really appreciate this. I'm sorry I was a little late coming into it. We were just finishing a meeting with Folk Alliance International, and I've been working the last couple of years with Performing Arts Readiness, and that's a group that was started after Hurricane Sandy, and the Eastern Seaboard was shut down, and they recognize that preparedness, like Jami's been talking about, for continuity of operations and mutual aid agreements and this sort of stuff, could really help mitigate the loss during a large storm. And then the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation has given them some very significant grants in the last couple of years. And when I left New Belgium, I'd been producing the Tour de Fat Festival for about 120 festivals around the country for like 25,000 people size venues in parks, and mostly philanthropically looking to raise money for bicycling. And then when I left there, my wife and I, Molly North from Bike Denver, went to Standing Rock, where we really saw that this large gathering of people looked a lot like a festival, and it looked a lot like a power damaged city, and it looked a lot like a refugee camp. And we recognized that the festival work we'd been doing for a lot of years was a lot like building temporary cities. So we've been taking courses on, you know, crowd management and outdoor stage plan reviews and FEMA classes, and that all sort of clicked, and we started working with Performing Arts Readiness to do emergency plan writing workshops with venues. I think Andrea came to one of those. We also helped Five Points Jazz Festival work on theirs, and we're recognizing a lot of these are like grandma's quilt, where like Pride Fest has come up with these incredible plans because they've been under threat of violence because of prejudice for a really long time. So internationally, they've been sharing their safety plans for a long time, and it creates this really great headwaters for a plan that other people can use for their festivals. So keeping with the each one teach one ethos that Youth on Record talks about a lot, we really look to say who's leading in the community, and how can you help other groups come up with Yeah, I'm seeing surf come up, great resource as well. And that mentality sort of pervades in this, which is to say, you're an artist, you're an organizer of a venue. How do you become part of the emergency response network? I really think that I put in the chat that Performing Arts Readiness has a bunch of free webinars, and they really delve down into a lot of the things that Jamie's already talked to today about continuity of operations, crisis communications, maintaining funding. There is, plenty of time that you could spend getting into each one of those free webinars. I'm going to suggest to PAR that Jamie teaches this exact class, like starting next week, and we get you some money to do that or something, because this is a really great way to share this information. The graphics you've put together, the way you organize that information is just amazing. So, and that you're doing it open source for other people to take on. I think we should do some announcements starting next, like that, to kind of land next Tuesday with an infographic for like survey your site, assess your risks, and prepare for mitigation. I'll throw out a couple things that we did with McNichol Civic Center building. They did have some serious unrest there. The building was set on fire with paint. There's some cars burned, some stuff like that. And I believe the windows all still have wood planking up on them. So while there's still time, organizations purchasing some of those supplies, taking an assessment of your area to make sure there's not objects that can be used as battering rams and things like that, that your sight lines are clear around your building, and that you purchase some graffiti removal chemicals right now before they're on a 3-month back order again. Those would be the kind of like quick and easy things I would throw out for building preparedness. If you already said this stuff, Jamie, sorry.
I didn't know. That's so great to hear.
Yeah, those are kind of the main ones. Let me see if there's anything else in our McNichol's plan. Unfortunately, wasn't like open source. So I'm going to see if we can get it to be redacted so we can share it. That's sort of the main stuff. Event Safety Alliance has got their yearly conference online December 3rd and 4th. There's a 3-hour course for making a reopening plan for your venue. This is probably going to be the best one out there. Steve Edelman and that group at Event Safety Alliance do a very good job of doing courses that are taught by the smartest folks in the field. So I would check out that 3-hour class. What else? Some links. You're going to gather them, Kate. This was really great. Sorry,
Kate's going to send out all the links after this. Matt, that's awesome. And let's talk about how we can keep this going. Is it Ozzy? Ozzy, have we met before? Are you with Denver Public Library?
Hi, it's Ozzy.
Ozzy, were you the one who put on like the most incredible equity and inclusion? Okay, well, anyway, you're my hero and we haven't met, and I just, like, you came in new to that job and put on, everybody's been talking about it, and I can't wait for us to meet in person. I'm so glad you're here. Would you mind, can you talk us through a little bit about what you're all thinking about the well-being of your employees, the trauma-informed workplace? That's our heart center too, but I would love to hear that from another source and from you in particular, because you have so much beautiful expertise in that area. So can you give some advice to our folks here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Ozzy Alozium. I am the new EDI manager for DPL. And so we've been having a lot of conversations around contingency planning. I sent that article in the chat, and we really use that kind of as our starting point to walk through a bunch of scenarios and like role play, basically, to see, okay, what would we do and how would we respond if any of these outcomes happened. I myself have been focusing on the wellness component. I'm a social worker, and so figuring out how do we create resources for our employees to manage this time, and not only this time as it relates to the election, but just we've been experiencing one crisis after the other. Our employees in the roles in which they fill are often exposed to trauma, so really intentionally trying to figure out how to bridge those gaps. And so a couple months ago, we had sent out a survey to figure out how employees are accessing our EAP, to figure out what are gaps to use, what are barriers, figuring out, okay, how long does it take to get to actual support if that's what you're looking for when it relates to a counselor. And based on that data, we identified that there was a need for kind of a more more support in real time. And so we're working to contract with the Mental Health Center of Denver to bring on a consultant for 15 hours a week who is a licensed social worker that will be available for those 15 hours for staff. So when traumatic things are happening, they have access to her, they can call her, set up an appointment, that kind of thing. We're also doing trauma-informed supervisor training, knowing that's not necessarily something that's taught in library school or in most schools outside of social work. And since we are in such a traumatic time, how do we provide our supervisors and our leaders with the tools to be able to lead their team and also manage the trauma they're experiencing? And so we're working with Brian Gonzalez, who is a licensed social worker and an LAC, which is a licensed addiction counselor who specializes in mental health, suicide, trauma, aging and older adults, and some other things. And he's also faculty at the University of Denver. And he's been doing this work with the VA. And so he is creating really tailored supervisory training for not only our executive team, but our branch managers and other leaders so that they're able to support their staff in the weeks to come. We're providing just more information around how to use our EAP, so sending out videos in terms of this is how you actually maneuver the website, these are what the offerings are, this is how far it extends so that folks really know how to be able to use that. And then also just linking folks to webinars and relevant resources. So the city actually has a couple of sessions, and I've been attending them just to vet them to see how they are. There's one around informed or infirmed. So what does healthy media consumption look like as the election approaches? There's a session on how to have disagreements or conversations with colleagues or with customers around the election. And then there's a session on collective trauma. So we're gonna be highlighting all of those resources and making those available to our staff. And then there is a link that I posted in the chat with what's it called? It's the NIHCM. And so they've been doing a lot of work in general around COVID. So how do you prioritize employee wellness and well-being in the virus? A lot of their resources are really are not just specific to the pandemic, but also can be applicable to this. And so there are presentations on there that are recorded and free that we are sending to our managers as well, so that they're able to walk away with more tangible tools to guide our teams. And it's really prioritizing the need for kind of peer and interpersonal support. So creating space for folks to have conversation. We're encouraging folks to really limit their meetings the week of the election. We're going to be doing our collective care circles, which we started in March. And that started primarily for our BIPOC staff as a way for folks of color to come together to do meditation and breath work, to work with a licensed therapist, to share what's on their hearts and their minds, and also receive some supports for resilience. And so we're strategically timing those around the election, as well as a care circle that will be open to all staff. So really trying to think about all of the different ways, trying to send out resources that we know are helpful, so that is one thing folks aren't kind of ending up in crisis around. As public servants, we know that we can't really be doing our job if we're not taking care of ourselves. And so really making sure our employees know that we're prioritizing their well-being, and that they're prioritizing their well-being is important to us right now.
I love it. And, you know, hero status just went up tenfold. Like, you are totally speaking my language. I would love to connect with you maybe offline about how, you know, I wonder if, you know, we're having definitely really important and necessary EDI conferences. We have, you know, there's different kind of conferences that we have, but I haven't seen a, you know, kind of 2-day multiple sessions on caring for your team. And I think that's necessary for our town. And there's enough leaders in this town now, and enough folks in this town saying, like, this is the priority. Also, it really couldn't get more Denver than that. I love it. Denver's so squishy in the best way. So let's talk offline. I'm so happy to meet you. Thank you for sharing that on the spot. Really, really grateful to you. Okay, so we've got about 8 more minutes. Want to open it up to questions, concerns, gaps we see, holes we see, anything you all want to talk about. Let's chat. And if we're ready to end early, we can do that too. We're going to send all of these resources in the chat out to you all. We'll be following up with folks, but But if we don't have questions, I would like to just do a quick let people know who you are, because this is a small enough group that we can do that. So, and yes, we will be sending the Youth on Record plan as well, which is yours to use. So if I could see your beautiful faces, if you want to show them on the screen. Any questions? All right, if not, let's just get to know each other briefly. So yeah, so we'll just popcorn it. Maybe we'll start with my good friend Jen. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Jen. I'm married to Stefan Brackett, who is part of the Youth on Record team, and just listened in today to hear some of the good info that you had to share. I actually work at the Children's Hospital, which is not a small nonprofit, but have also been a part of Project Worth More for many years and was interested in understanding more about preparedness. So thank you, Jamie. It's been wonderful.
Great, and we'll just popcorn it. I won't call on you. Just feel free to go next who's ever ready to introduce yourself and tell us where you are, because not everybody's in call. Unless you want me to call on you, which might be more helpful. Spencer.
I feel like you saw my eyes get as big as pumpkins and you were like, oh yeah, he definitely wants to talk. Hi, I'm Spencer Townsend Hughes. I'm a co-founder of Music Minds Matter that Jamie had mentioned earlier. We are an organization that provides mental wellness resources for musicians and music community members. And through the Denver Arts and Venues Denver Music Advancement Fund, hi Matthew, we've been able to kind of expand our meetup into like a much larger organization where we're starting to do programming and things. Co-founder Angela and I are now certified in mental health first aid instruction. So we're able to teach organizations and employees the importance of mental health first aid if someone's experiencing a mental health crisis, how you can be the front lines to de-escalate and essentially get them to deeper support services. So we see that as a valuable tool because our mental health professionals are wildly overwhelmed right now. And so being on the front lines to be a community member that someone experiencing crisis can approach and have a conversation with is something that we see as incredibly valuable, especially in the music community. So I appreciate everyone being on this call. Jamie, I appreciate you so much for doing this. This is
of course. Happy to.
So,
all right, who's up? Yeah, you call somebody, Spencer. That's a good idea.
Oh boy. I'll popcorn Susie.
Thanks, Spencer. Hi, everybody. I'm Susie Staley. I serve as the Associate Director at the Neutral Zone in Ann Arbor. And I'm here with my colleague, John. I'm sure he can introduce himself, but we're an arts and leadership organization in Ann Arbor. We have music programs, and that's largely why we're connected to the MIDA Network and ELMA Network and to the Lewis Prize. But we also have supports in leadership education, visual and media arts as well. And yes, I actually sent a private message to my colleague, John, Jamie, in this call that this was really validating and really helped me to process a lot of the things that I was already thinking, but maybe hadn't said out loud. So thanks for that. And I'll pass to John just to kind of get Neutral Zone, out of the way, introduced.
And I'm so happy you guys are here. We're big fans, as you know.
Thank you. Likewise.
Good afternoon. I'm John Weiss. I'm one of the directors at the Neutral Zone. And the only thing that Susie forgot to mention is that we pride ourselves on being youth driven, which means really focusing on uplifting youth voice and decision making in all the work we do with the program, governance, and organizational levels. So thank you. Lots of valuable resources. And I will go right below me in my Zoom to Ramona.
Thank you very much. I'm Ramona Robinson. I'm in Denver and co-owner of Ground Floor Media PR firm and Center Table Digital Marketing Agency. We work with a number of nonprofits, large and small, from the Tennyson Center for Children to Planned Parenthood to Children's Hospital to SCL Health to Craig Hospital. So a number of our clients, both proactively and then on crisis communications work. So I am so glad that one of my colleagues let me know about this. Jami, thank you for inviting me and allowing me to attend. And I have a number of resources now to provide to many of our important nonprofit clients. And I'm also going to put a link in the chat. We have a nonprofit resource page. So if your nonprofit in Denver or Colorado has either volunteer or donation needs, especially during COVID, we set that up to help spread the word about that. So I'm going to put my email and a link to that in the chat. And if it's helpful for anyone to be listed there, I'd be happy to have that. Thanks.
Awesome. So glad you could make it. Who are you going to pass it to?
I am going to pass it to, who hasn't spoken yet? Sonia?
Sorry, unmute. Hi, I'm Sonia Ray. I'm Director of Audience and Community Engagement at the Clifford Still Museum in Denver. Something that's on my mind right now is all the amazing resources that people have spoken about and that Jami has provided. And I'm wondering if there's some role that maybe Bonfils Stanton could play or Denver Arts and Venues could play in collecting a lot of these resources in one place for the entire community to access. Ozzy, also incredible resources, and I couldn't write things down fast enough. So I would love to connect with you as well. I'm going to popcorn to Tony DeSantis, who's having trouble with his camera, but Tony is our head of security at the Clifford Still Museum, and I told him about this this event, and he jumped right on. So over to you, Tony.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I appreciate it, and I apologize again. I may have broke the camera on my laptop, so I'll deal with that after this. Jami, thank you so much for putting this together, especially during these times. I know you mentioned the shooting that happened, and that happened to be right next to our institution, and it was a scary situation. And I really appreciate the insight from everyone. And I have a little bit of a different perspective. My goal is to set up plans in place so when things like that happen, I can make the right decisions for my institution. So what I've been struggling with lately is finding the necessary resources where I can get that information as quick as possible, as accurate and quick as possible, so I can make the right decisions for my museum and to keep everyone, the staff and guests, safe, and make sure that they're aware of what's going on. So I really appreciate everybody's insight and all the resources. I'm going to definitely look into everything. And if anybody, I'm looking into different resources on how to find that information and how to, and resources for planning as well. So if anybody wants to know what I found, please reach out to me. My email is on here. So.
Well, and Tony, that's great. And if you wanted to share any of it in the chat, you just brought up a great place that I actually think is a hole in the plan, which is where are the most reliable local and national sources to get up-to-date information on unrest, right? So that we know in the moment it's happening. So thank you for pointing that out. That I'm laughing at myself right now thinking like, didn't think of that. Maybe that's because like I'm a news junkie and so I just have it here at all times. Like I have wildfire alerts on my phone. I don't live there, right? But I just want to know who's being evacuated. So very smart. That's a page that's missing, is like, where do we go to get the immediate information so that we can make the decision? So we don't have to necessarily rely on Twitter, although Twitter is actually not a bad source. That stuff breaks on Twitter sometimes before the news. So let's start a chain about sharing that stuff. Great advice, Tony.
Definitely.
All right, you want to popcorn it to somebody?
I kind of lost track of who has and has not spoken.
Oh, you can't. I have somebody's name on here. Oh, go ahead. We've got Brady and then Chris.
Thanks, Tony. Hey, everybody, I'm Chris. I'm a program leader for My Voice Music in Portland, Oregon. We're a music nonprofit. We take care of writing, recording, and releasing for youth. And it's been a crazy year with everything going on, as you all know. Facilitating music over webcam is a very interesting thing to learn how to do. But yeah, really happy to be here and to hear all of this amazing information. Thanks so much for the invite. I do have to hop off here. That's why I raised my hand. But I've been taking diligent notes. We're going to be having a team meeting about all this, and we're really grateful for the resources. Thank you all for your expertise and eloquence, and it's been really, really insightful. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Let's be in touch too about our program. Sounds like there's synergy there. So
definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And then I think we've got Brady.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'm Brady Grant with Prodigy Coffee House. We're a young adult apprenticeship program teaching the craft of coffee here in Denver, and lots of other skills and support. Yeah, I just want to say this call's great, Jamie, and everyone else who has contributed. You know, I think we're slowly trying to pull ourselves out of a reactive state to more of a proactive state as we head further into this fall. And so this is beyond helpful, and just thank you so much. And Spencer, I want to say our team did go through the mental health first aid this spring, and or maybe it was over the winter, really valuable in supporting some of our direct program participants in more effective ways, and you know, connecting them more effectively and in healthy ways to resources as they need them. So yeah, I think that's a really cool thing that you're doing in training for that. So yeah, just want to thank you again, Jamie, and the Youth on Record team. And I'm not sure if anyone else hasn't introduced themselves, so I'll go ahead and just.
I think we have, and I apologize, is it Erasmo Martinez? I don't know you, but I want to.
Yeah, it's Erasmo Martinez.
Erasmo, okay. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet everybody. Thank you guys for inviting me to this. I'm a audio and community mentor at SpyHop.
Nice. Oh, yay. How exciting. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have heard of them, but we're like a youth media art center, basically. And we just teach media arts to the youth here in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah, you guys are legends. We've been following you since we started. You guys are legends to us, for sure.
Thanks. But yeah, I just wanted to pop in just to see what resources I could get for fellow students as well as just our staff, and to see all the resources in the chat get flooded. It's like, it's cool. I have some stuff that I can take back to them to talk about. All of it, I'm not even sure how I'll be able to tie it into some of the stuff that we've been having here, because even as I think to it, I don't feel like we've had so much civil unrest to the point where it's happening super like big. I don't feel like it's happened as bad here, but to have these resources for if that does end up being the case, I think is very vital. So
yeah, Erasmo, you're gonna like a resource that we have. It's on the Taking Care of Your Team page, and it's the self-care guide for creatives. It's really good. Your students are gonna love it. Your team's gonna love it. So I'm so happy you're on here. SpyHop is amazing, and yeah, you are legends to us. So
yeah,
cool.
Thank you guys for allowing me to be here, though. I do appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, bud. Yeah, I think we've got three folks who haven't gone: Simone, Angela, and Stefan. And they may not want to.
I'll go ahead.
Angela, go for it. Oh, and then we got Simone next.
Doing the polite pause, and I can't see everybody on the phone screen. So thanks, Jamie. I got here through my friend Cole at Handsome Little Devils, who works with Matt at Majestic Collaboration. So it's just great that these conversations are happening, and I'm excited about a one-stop shop resource list for everything. So thank you for that. I'm the founder and executive producer of Athena Project. We're an arts organization that empowers women in the arts. And we are doing an event called Ballot to the Box that I wanted to spread the word about. We're utilizing artists to be able to get ballots to the actual voter box for people that might be in need, whether it's fear of going to the polls, fear of COVID, or whatever. We've got artists that are wanting to help And so the initiative is text ballot to the box to 877-329-2304. We run from October 26th through November 2nd, which is the last date you can mail in your ballot is the 26th. And then November 2nd is the day before the election because, you know, just in case things happen. But any person actually can pick up ballots on behalf of people, up to 10 ballots per election cycle, according to Colorado statute. And we're highlighting artists, though, in doing this work, just to bring a spotlight onto how artists are suffering right now and how unemployed we unfortunately are. So if you can help spread the word, I'll put it in the chat, but that's our main focus right now, is get those ballots into the box.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela. Love the Athena Project. Simone, so happy to see you.
Hello. Hopefully you guys
Hi, buddy.
With my mask on. So my name is Simone Brackett. I am the head of kindergarten, first and second grade at Stanley British Primary School, just beginning this year. Stephen Brackett's sister also, so sometimes that's important. Really excited to be able to participate in this, really excited to be able to get the information. I've been talking to Stefan all along as you guys have kind of been creating the documents and the resources, and being in a school, I think being in a school across the board, whether in public to private, and we are in person. So we're in our 8th week in person. And I think it's super important that we're not looking at our own little bubbles that we create inside of our schools, but really looking at the community at large and what might be happening with our parents, what might be happening with the institutions that our parents use, what could be happening with their jobs, and not just preparing for how we can maybe support our teachers and support our students, but really keeping everyone safe by being aware and being prepared. So that was a really important thing for me to be able to. Stefan and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, and he said, you know, we're working on this document at school. And I was like, awesome, because our admin team is talking about ways to support, you know, our community and the fallout of the election, you know, however people are feeling about it. But really, I was feeling this deep need to say, like, just supporting people emotionally is not going to be enough. And you have to be able to look at the broader picture, and it's not alarmist and it is not conspiracy theorist to look at where we are right now and how elevated everything is emotionally, sociopolitically, and all of that really comes down to our most vulnerable community members, which would be our children. So that is my information.
Love it, Simone. Thanks so much. I was just going to call on Stefan, but he got here, so he must have been on the Zoom call at in his car. So here he is. That's Stefan. Cool. Well, you guys, so grateful for this. So grateful for the time. We'll have more of these. And again, these are just, no one is a total expert here, but the sum of all of these parts has a lot of wisdom and expertise and love and compassion for each other. So I'm grateful I got to spend the morning with you. Thanks for taking a shot on this little conversation. It's going to be all right. The more prepared we are, the more all right it's going to be, because we'll be ready to face anything. So we will follow up with these incredible resources. Thanks again, super grateful, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.